Hi, Jen.
Hi, Emma.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I am doing good, I think. Yeah, we'll go with good today.
Good. Yeah, I want to tell you about this play that I saw 2 nights ago now. It's called Six.
Uh-huh.
And it's about the 6 wives of Henry VIII.
Oh.
So it's a historical musical, which is just the best. It was originally written and performed by Cambridge students, I guess. And then it came to the West End, and then it was supposed to come to Broadway, but then the pandemic happened, and so it was delayed. So I've been waiting for this show for a while. It was really good, though. They form a pop group, and it's really good. And then they compete for who had to put up with the most shit.
Like a ghost pop
from
group?
Henry VIII. Yeah, I guess. So the final wife survived.
Okay.
And then 2 of them got divorced, and 2 of them were beheaded.
Okay.
That's how the show starts. It's like divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. It's really great. But so it's kind of acknowledged that they're dead. Some of them more than others. The 2 who are divorced, not so much. But it's really good. The music is really good, and it's pertinent to this actually because when I was reading our book that we're going to talk about today, I was listening to the soundtrack. A lot. So the soundtrack also makes me think of the book and vice versa. So the 2 are entwined for me.
So were you listening to the soundtrack before you actually saw the play?
Yes, I couldn't wait. Typically I like to go. I see a lot of musicals. I love musical theater, and I like to go in blind. And I waited for as long as I could with this one. I had heard a few songs, but I waited for as long as I could, and finally I was like, no, I want to listen to it, and then I just binged it. But the show it honestly lived up to the hype, even though I had heard all the music. It was just really great.
That's so cool. Wow, that's really fun.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really neat idea for a play.
What I liked about it, too, is this is kind of rare, I think, in my experience with plays, is there was no intermission, so it just went through, and it was 80 minutes, so it wasn't like a particularly late night. Sometimes when I go to shows, you get out kind of late because there's the intermission, and it's an hour and 30 minutes per half or whatever. A long time to sit still, and this was just a really fun one. I'd recommend it if you get the chance to see it, if it comes touring and stuff.
Yeah, we don't go to enough plays. We do every year the symphony does some movies to music, and every year they play a Harry Potter movie, and they do in order. So I feel like that is the only thing we do regularly that we're making a habit. So
I've never done one of those, and I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to do Star Wars or Indiana Jones. I guess the same composer does all 3 of those.
Wow.
Seeing John Williams, yeah. But seeing Hans Zimmer, I think he's the one who did Lord of the Rings, right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. I'm not positive, though. I'm not going to bet anything on that. And that would be really cool to see the Lord of the Rings, too. But that's also a long time to sit still, particularly for those extended versions.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. It's so interesting to me, being a composer, I'm sure has so much to it. I'm interested in, what kind of kid grows up and is I want to be a composer. How do you realize that's a job?
Yeah.
What a unique job to aspire to be. Because I think it's, very prestigious, right? It's, a really big deal.
I would imagine... So, I think there's probably, a spectrum, with a lot of professions, because I'm thinking about Courtney from Bob's Burgers. Her dad composes, the little jingles, and he's just kind of a doof. But then you have people like John Williams who have won a shit ton of Academy Awards for, scoring these films. I think that's, if music is your passion, I'm sure that's a really compelling job, like being able to score like film or video games.
Is that the same thing as
like
composing them? I don't know what the difference is, or if they are the same.
I think so. I think the score is the music, so I would assume the verb of scoring them is to compose the music for it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know anything about music, really. I took the flute in 5th grade, and then I played guitar for a little bit. It's pretty. Oh, and piano. I did piano lessons as a kid, but I have weak little pinkies, so it wasn't great.
I took piano and voice lessons, and I didn't know this until I got older. I was never very good at singing, and apparently when I got older, my vocal instructor told my parents that she thought I was tone deaf. Because they'd always be like, why can't she get a solo? And they were like, we can't give her a solo. Like, that's just not.
Oh my gosh.
Not going to
so
work.
Funny.
So what's really interesting is I had this, like, revelation the same night you were at the play. And I had to talk to you. So I was, like, texting you over and over. I was like, you have to respond. You have to respond. What are you doing? And I also, like, texted you on Instagram. And I almost texted your husband. And then I was like, okay, I think I need to calm down a little bit. I think I need to use my breathing and just breathe my way through this. I think I'm going to make it. And I made it.
When I got out of the play and I saw, Jen, this is really important. You have to call me right now. I didn't see the hundreds of text messages that had come before. For whatever reason, those were the 2 that came in, and I was like, holy shit. What's wrong? Oh my God. Oh my God. And so I was just relieved to hear you go, Jen, on the other side of the phone, because then it was like, okay, everything is probably fine because she sounds happy.
Yeah. And to be fair, I didn't say what I had to say was really important. I said what you were doing better be important for missing all of my contact attempts.
That makes sense. I probably just saw really important and I was like, oh no.
Because what I had to say was not, in fact, important at all. But
it made me laugh.
Well, so we are going to talk about the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires today. And, we have so many thoughts and feelings about it. But then we wanted to read some other Grady Hendrix books. So we decided to do the Final Girl Support Club. And her husband gave me a copy, like an electronic copy, which at first I was like, should I read an electronic copy? Like, I should just buy it. Like, that's the ethical thing to do. And I was like, I buy so many books. Like, I support authors all the time. If I read one copy online, it's not going to kill me. So I read the first 3 chapters, and it's a Final Girl Support Group, right?
Final Girl Support Club or group. I think it's got to be group because the Southern Book Club.
Oh, right. Okay. So I read the first chapters and they're all about like this woman who has pretty severe PTSD, like going to this group. And Jen immediately was like, this book was not for me. So the first 3 chapters were like sort of boring. And then I get to the next chapter and it's like riveting. Starts with this woman who works at this hotel and just is like very meek and mild-mannered, but then it goes into how she used to be in a metal band and she used to be like much different, and all about how the lead singer like sold them out and like rose to fame, and she's like trying to get to him. And it's just so cool. Like, it's just such a cool story. And it's not necessarily like super scary, I would say. I wasn't like, when I read Pet Sematary, I was like, oh my God, I gotta put this down. It wasn't like that, but it was sort of like a really fun, kitschy horror book, right? Like, it had a theme, talked all about metal music and stuff like that, and the people that like it and the music. And so it was really fun. It was a really good book. And I kept being like, why did Jen not like this? So then I get to the end of the book, and the whole time I'm like, it's really weird he named this the Final Girl Support Group. I was like, that's really only the first 3 chapters, right? I'm like, the rest of it was about metal. Like, I probably would have named it like Troglodyte or like Dirt Work or like all these things from the book. I'm like, but I know he's going to tie it back together. it almost seemed like he got distracted during his writing, and he was like, this idea is actually cooler. So then he just wrote that and was going to tie it in at the end. So I'm getting near the end. I'm like, oh, I bet like she's going to disappear, but like she's going to change her identity and she's going to be Lynette from the support group, right? The main character. And that's going to be the whole thing. It's going to be really interesting. Even though I started to get less and less convinced because I'm like, I don't know how he's going to tie this up in one page, like that they were together in the support group, and also like why that mattered anymore if nothing else happened with the support group. So I'm reading, I get to the end. That's not what happens. There's no mention of the final girl support group anymore. And I immediately go online and I'm like looking up like final girl support group confusing. I'm like, was anyone else as confused as I was? And I'm like, wow, this must be like really highbrow stuff. Like there must be some sort of like there must be some sort of connection I'm not seeing, like some like wording that's in here, some Easter eggs that somehow tie the two together. It was just a different book. It was a book called We Sold Our Souls, also by Grady Hendrix. It was really, really good. But it was not the same book.
Yeah.
So
I'm really excited to read that one, but it is not the book I read. I read the right book.
Well, and my partner was like, didn't you notice? And I was like, yeah, I thought he sort of just got distracted when he was writing, and he was like really onto something with this other book. So he started going in that direction. He was going to tie it back in. And then I was thinking about it. I was like, this is actually not the first time this has happened to me. So when I was reading, you know the movie I Am Legend? It's a book too. I'm not sure if you've read it.
Yeah. I haven't read it or seen it.
Yeah.
But I did know it was a book.
Yeah, so it's a book, and I read the book. And at the end of the book, there's a compilation of short stories. And so I got to the end. I started reading. Like, I didn't realize that was at the end, so I just kept reading. Because it wasn't, like, clearly delineated. It looked like just another chapter. So I kept reading, and I was like, what does this have to do with this guy? I'm like, this is a completely different story. What was he thinking as an author? None of this makes sense. And it's crazy how much I just don't trust my own instinct, because instead of getting like a page or two in and being like, what's going on, and Googling it, I literally read all of the short stories because I was like, surely it's going to tie together somehow. Surely it will tie together. And I looked it up afterward, like same thing, right? Like I Am Legend confusing. Why is it so confusing? It's just short stories. They're just totally unrelated. So
that's so funny.
Yeah. Apparently I do this with books. If there's like something at the end, I read them not realizing that it is no longer the same story.
That's so funny. Yeah. We Sold Our Souls sounds better to me than the Final Girl Support Club. You'll have to... We're not doing that one today.
Well, we can't because I didn't read
obviously,
it.
Obviously, because Emma hasn't read it. Right. But we'll get to that. And you'll have to... She just kept texting me, like, did you not like it from the beginning? Or when did you start to not like it? Should I be, like, prepared for this? And I really didn't know what to say because I didn't want to bias her opinion of it. But if we had just talked a little bit about the plot, I think we would have understood that she wasn't reading the same thing that I was. We just didn't. We just didn't talk about it at all. Oh. And then I was like, well... if Emma really likes it, maybe, it's a lot better than I thought it was. I don't know. But I didn't like it. I'm excited to talk about it, though.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I really liked the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which I think was part of the problem, is I read the Final Girl Support Club immediately after, and I was coming off of the high of really liking the book that we're talking about today, and it was a disappointment.
Yeah.
And I kept waiting to like it, but I liked this book immediately. I was riveted from For Amanda, wherever all of your pieces are, or whatever the dedication is, that had nothing to do with the book. I liked the foreword. I liked the satire definition about a housewife. in the very beginning. Everything about it caught my attention. And yeah, careful for spoilers. We're going to dive deep into this book. If you haven't read it, go read it and come back. If you don't want to read it, you're a fool. You should read it. But you can also just listen to us talk about it, I guess. I just really liked it. Grady Hendrix was born in South Carolina, and his parents got divorced when he was 13, and so he spent a lot of time in libraries. I'm sure you've read this, but and that's really how he got his like start with books and literature. I think he's a great author, and I really liked the firsthand, you could tell it was firsthand knowledge and experiences that went into making this the wonderful satire that it was. And how like comedic it really was at times. It was also genuinely scary and creepy at times. I just thought it was this wide range of emotions in this tiny, almost cute little package. I loved it. I
loved this book so much. So I love him as an author, having read We Sold Our Souls in the first 3 chapters of I Know Girls Support Group. If you look at his bio online, it's just so fun. He talks about how he writes like lies, aka fiction, and all these like fun little details and things like that. And like you said, I live in the South, and I feel like there was a lot to this that was very like nuanced and very intriguing about Southern culture that just like really hit home, especially not being someone from the South and moving to the South. And I love this book so much. It was one of those books, and I felt this way about We Sold Our Souls too. It was one of those books that like I just wanted with me. I just wanted close. Like when we like were ready to record, I brought the book with me, not because I needed to look at anything from it, but just because I wanted to like touch it and have it close to me. So
I think I told you while I was in the midst of reading this book, I had taken off work early to go and help my dad with a project. And I totally forgot that I was supposed to go help my dad because I was so immersed in reading this book. And my mom calls me and is like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's good. I got off work and I'm reading." And she was like, "Okay, well, you were supposed to be here 2 hours ago." I was like, "Oh my God." I just totally forgot. And I don't really forget things like that often. But it was just a really good book. And I understand what you mean when you said you wanted it with me, because I just like couldn't put it down. And at the same time, I wanted to put it down because I wanted it to last forever.
I know.
I really liked it.
When I was reading We Sold Our Souls, I was reading on my computer, and I couldn't take it with me. That's one of the things I like about the physical books is like bringing them with me. They're just comforting. I love reading, and I love like horror books, and somehow they comfort me. I was like putting my laptop away, getting ready for work, and I was just like, "I'll miss you." And my partner was like, "Me or Bruno?" And I was like, I was talking to my book. And she just looked at me and I was like, "Oh my God." Like, yeah, I don't know how to lighten the blow. Like I was like stroking my computer as I was like putting it down.
My precious.
I love this book too. I read it so fast. I think you did too.
Yeah, I did.
We started around the same time, probably finished it near the same time because we both just got through it so fast. And it was one of those things I didn't want to put down. And I kept making audible noises. Like I'd be like sitting next to my partner and be like, "No. Oh my God, no."
Yeah. It was so good.
Why?
I really liked that it also read like, I felt more so than like reading Stephen King, it really felt like a horror film, like almost like I was watching a horror film, because like we as the audience knew what was going on, and Patricia kind of knew, and you could tell that maybe this guy was bad news, and everyone's like, "No, Patricia," kind of just like you are when you're watching an 80s film or something, and you're like, "No, don't go in there." It was a lot of that, and I thought that was really well written. I thought it read like almost like a movie script, truly. It was just very interesting. And I really liked, something I also really appreciated is, I like Stephen King. You know, I love Stephen King. He's very wordy.
Yes.
And the action sequences that Grady Hendrix is able to provide are so simple that he doesn't lose me. I'm not skimming.
Right.
I'm reading it because he's laying it out really simply. There's no extra details that don't need to be there. And he still does a really good job of making it creepy. Particularly, there's a scene where she's in the attic and there's a cockroach crawling in her ear. That was for me the most horrifying scene.
And with the rats.
I really wanted to skip it. The rats were gross. Even in the beginning, which I wanted to ask you about this, like when Patricia gets her ear bitten off, what is that ever explained? Like why she went crazy and attacked Patricia? Like Slick didn't immediately turn into a vampire. She got like really, really ill in the hospital, and his aunt, who knows if she was actually related to him in any way, probably not, just went crazy and attacked Patricia after he moved into the house. And that was a really disturbing scene too, with her eating, I think it was a raccoon.
Yeah. Okay, this is really interesting because I love talking to you about this stuff, because I think out of everything that he lied about and did, I never ever considered that he wasn't actually related to his aunt. Like, I don't know. Oh. I don't know why, because now it seems so obvious. Like, she was probably just some random woman. But in my head, I, like, never questioned that part. I was like, oh, yeah, she was just related to a vampire. Sounds accurate. Like,
I mean, maybe she was. It's not explored, but it also, like, led me to believe that either that was his home at some point, and he was like, well, I'm just going to take my house back. There's a random lady living here. I'm just going to say we're related. Yeah. Because all that money was there, and I don't actually remember the details of the money. As he was like, it's hers, but my guess is it was actually his, and he like stashed it there. I don't know. I just thought it was, you know who I also really loved? I know I'm all over the place here, but I loved Grace.
Really? I was not a huge Grace fan.
Yeah. Oh my God. When they were all in the hospital and Grace left, I was like, do not do this plan without Grace. You will fail without Grace. And then thank God Grace returned to clean up everyone's mess. Like, thank goodness for Grace. I thought she was the best.
Really? She was my least favorite character.
Yes. Oh, I really liked her. I was like, she's no nonsense, and I just trust her. She seemed so competent compared to some of the other, like, tomfoolery that was going on, as she was like, this is the mission. I will complete the mission. I will do this. When she set her mind to it. And, like, yeah, she wasn't on board as often as she should have been, but she really came through in the end, and I don't know how they would have done it without her.
Yeah, they wouldn't have.
Yeah, she crushed it. Yeah, I loved Grace.
It's so interesting. I like Slick a lot.
I
really liked her character.
Yeah. I liked all of I liked Patricia a lot. Kitty. But I really liked Grace. And when Grace came back, I knew everything was going to be okay. That's when I was like, no one else is probably going to get hurt. Grace is here.
We're good.
I don't know. I just trusted her.
I feel like at this point we're just naming all, like, we're like, we like these characters, but that's just all the characters. So we just liked all the characters.
Yeah, it is. Not the men so much.
Oh my God.
Because that was the true horror. The true horror was when I was really upset the most, I think. What upset me most about that book is when they all had that intervention with the women and no one would listen to them. And I was like, this is why it's a horror book. Like, this is horrifying. This is horrifying that these women are right and they know they're right and no one will listen to them. And there's nothing they can do. Yeah.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about sort of the feminist content of this book, because I think that's one of the reasons we both loved it, was because it was so... It was so prevalent throughout the book, but not in a way that was like, I'm going to make this a feminist book and do this thing and this thing. Like, it was just very nuanced, I think, in a way that felt very natural to the plot line, but made a lot of really important points. one of the pieces that just like broke my heart was when Patricia, what was his name? Was it James? Okay.
James.
So when James came over.
Harris.
James Harris.
James Harris.
So when he came over after she had talked to the police and they were all sitting at the dinner table and this was just so vivid in my mind. He just wrote it so beautifully. And to your point, I think, like, I love Stephen King's writing. He's probably my favorite writer. His writing is very, very, like, flowery and wordy. And he uses a lot of words, I think, too, that if you're not a reader, you're, like, constantly looking things up, right? Like, he uses a lot of really big words and complex words. I don't think Grady Hendrix does that a lot. I think Grady Hendrix is a very simple writer, but he really paints a picture not having to use, like, fancy words or things like that. Like, it really gets the point across. But there are fewer times that I'm like, what is that word in his books? But I think his writing is very clear and very, very vivid. Like, the imagery he paints is very vivid. And the piece that he just, like, wrote so beautifully, and it hurt my heart, was when they're all at the dinner table, and it describes Patricia looking at her husband and trying to convey to him not to tell James that she had told the police. And she talks about, like, she put every piece of herself into that look, and, like, every bond of trust that they had and every moment of importance. And she tried to use, like, everything that was their relationship to convey to him. And I think, you know, anyone who's had a partner for a significant amount of time knows what that's like, right? When you look at your partner and you're like, please don't betray me. Like, please understand what I need, where I'm coming from. And he just immediately throws her under the bus. Like, immediately.
I know.
And it just broke my... And that's when his character was irredeemable for me. Because I was like, he's never gonna...
Yeah.
He's never going to be who she needs, or just be a, like, worthwhile or helpful person to her.
Yeah. He wasn't, and it only got worse from there. And it didn't start great. Before then, even, Carter.
Fucking Carter.
Yeah. I felt for all of those women, and none of them had any support from the men in their lives. It was just mind-blowing to me that all of the men were unsupportive, in different ways. And all problematic. Yeah.
I also really loved the use of, like, mental health to subdue women, right? Because that's just true. It actually reminded me a little bit of the American Horror Story Asylum season. She was like, I'm not mentally ill. Like, I don't need to be here. But I was like, no, you just don't understand. Like, you're not understanding. You do need to be here. And that's how they got her, right? Was to convince her that she was just crazy. And she just didn't understand, and she needed hospitalization. Like,
right.
Gosh, I think about how easy it would be if everyone's telling you, oh, it's you, you're crazy, how easy it would be to believe that.
Well, the problem was, too, like, Carter wasn't just a doctor. Her husband was a psychiatrist. So he had, I mean, I feel like she fought it as well as anyone could have fought those assumptions. But if an expert in the field, regardless of, like, your personal relationship to them, is telling them, you should take this medicine, it will help you, how are you not going to want to believe that? Just, and the way he also, Carter is irredeemable. The way he brought the children to the hospital.
Oh my God.
To see her, and was like, she tried to kill herself or whatever he said, I don't remember, was just, he was such a manipulative bastard.
He was awful. And I really like...
Yeah.
So, Grady Hendrix, I really like the way... Like, one of my complaints about Stephen King, even though I love him, is I think in some of his novels, he just doesn't do a good job of portraying women. Like, I don't think he does a terrible job of it, but I think his portrayals of men are often just, like, really complex and nuanced and, like, I don't know, even like Fran, right, in The Stand. Like, she's great. But she doesn't have like a ton of complexity. She's just like the good person that's sort of a badass and always does right and always does good. And I really like the way that Grady Hendrix writes women.
Yeah. I do too. I thought until I like looked it up after, I was like, maybe Grady is also a woman's name. Because I thought it was a nice, refreshing to read about horror and women and not be like, why is this character so underdeveloped? Yeah. I thought it was great. And to your point, too, like, Fran is great and Fran is this badass until she meets Stu, and then she just becomes Stu's side piece. And none of these women were their husbands' side. Well, they were. To these to the men, that's exactly what they were. But I really liked that that's not how they were portrayed. And that wasn't the perspective that we got as the reader.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, he writes a lot of books from the female perspective, right? Like, this is almost all about, like, a female book club. The book I read had a lot of men in it. The main character was a woman. But I think he does a good job of balancing. He actually writes about trauma a lot, too. And I think he does a good job of balancing, and maybe not the Final Girl Support Club, but balancing the difference between someone who is weak versus someone who is, like, really trying but traumatized. Because I think a lot of these characters in here and the one I read were people that were, like, really working but were just, like, really traumatized. And so that balance of, like, you can empathize with them. You can feel for them in a way where you're not like, oh, why are they so, like, weak? Why are they so sad?
Right.
I love this book.
I did too. I can't say enough good things about it. I just really liked it. Did you know that growing up his grandmother had dementia and that really, like, freaked him out? And so that was he knew like it wasn't her fault, but he kind of saw her as a monster, and that was kind of his inspiration for creating Miss Mary. Was he wanted to give her, like, this hero moment that he didn't necessarily, like, not give to his grandmother, but he wanted to this is, like, a quote, I believe it's from him, to give her the hero moment she deserved, the one that Alzheimer's robbed her of at the end of her life, for his grandmother.
I love that.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I loved Miss Mary. Like, when she was coherent for those, like, maybe 5 or 6 pages, I was just like just, like, inhaling it, just, like, eating it up. Yeah. That was so scary, too. And the fact that, like, that wasn't an inherently scary scene, and you're still, like, I'm like you, I'm sitting on the couch going, oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. I just think he's a really good writer. I was on edge the whole time. I couldn't put it down. I wanted to put it down to prolong it.
Yeah. And there wasn't, I think a lot of writers in horror sometimes go to, like, body mutilation or, like, like, killing small animals. And it's not that he never did those things, but I think he used them very sparingly. Like, those weren't necessarily the parts that were the scariest to me. And I appreciated that, because I think sometimes it's sort of like, oh, well, we're just going to scare you by talking about how this body was mutilated. And I'm like, seems like sort of a cheap trick sometimes.
Yeah, it does. He didn't do that. I think he made it scary in other ways, which was cool and creative.
The last time I felt this way about an author was when I read Gillian Flynn. So I read her Gone Girl, which the movie was great, but doesn't, like, touch the book. The book is so good. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I read all of her other books. She didn't have too many. And I was just like, I will read everything this woman writes. And that's how I felt when I read this one. I was like, I have to read the other books that he's written. I want to read My Best Friend's Exorcism, too. I've heard good things about that.
Yeah, that's the one that's loaded on my tablet now. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah,
one.
and there's one about like a haunted Swedish books like store, right?
And he just also released one this month called How to Sell a Haunted House.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah.
We have to read it.
So that's exciting. I know, we absolutely do.
What would you...
I don't know. I just thought it was really good, and I thought what was really interesting, you live in the South now, I lived in the South for a long time, and just that Southern hospitality and that politeness overweighing the fact that Patricia knows something is wrong. She's like, oh, this seems kind of sketchy, but let me help him put $80,000 in a bank account. Like, oh, this seems kind of sketchy, but let me invite him to my book club. Let me invite him. You know, it's just that fear of not being polite for her at that time. It obviously didn't say that way, but it was everything.
Yeah.
And in that way, it was so funny at times. Yeah. Just to watch her, like, really struggle with, ooh, I can't be rude, but I don't know about this.
When she lets him into her house afterward, right? Like, she saw him in the van, and then she literally lets him in. And I'm like,
yes,
don't do that. Please don't do that. Mm-mm. Did you have a favorite part?
That's a hard
question.
Did I have a favorite part? Shoot. There's so much good about it. I guess I did really like when I really liked Miss Mary describing how he had fucked over her family like years and years and years ago. I thought that was really well done. I also really liked when Patricia first got attacked. It didn't happen too early in the book, and it didn't happen too late that we were waiting for action to occur. I think it happened at like the right time. I don't know that I have a favorite part. I just thought it was a really complete and well-told story.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Do you have a favorite part? You must. You wouldn't have asked if you didn't.
I don't have necessarily a favorite part. I forgot how much I liked the backstory. Hey, you talked about with Miss Mary and about how she wouldn't let them eat the peaches, I think it was, or some sort of fruit. And she always said that it didn't taste right, and then it tells you why. I thought that was really well done. And I loved the part that scared me the most was when Mrs. Green was like, yeah, they're taking our children. And I just was like, oh, yeah. My God. Like, my stomach just turned to knots. Because you didn't expect that, right? Because you know that Patricia knows something's sort of wrong, but, like, these children are already being taken and already being stolen and killed.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, this is so much worse than we thought it was.
Totally.
So. And the good news is they're coming out with a TV show.
Yeah. I hope they do it justice.
I do too. So I have some thoughts. I took some notes. Who would you pick to play Patricia?
No, you start, because I didn't have time to think about this. You start. You have some thoughts. You go.
I have all of the thoughts. So, first, I thought about Patricia Arquette. I don't know why.
That's who I was thinking. It's because the name is the same, I think, because that's exactly who I thought of.
I think she also just has that, like, she's been in a few shows and stuff where she did play sort of that mom role, but I think she's a little older to be playing Patricia, because I got the sense that Patricia was sort of like a young mom. So then I thought maybe someone like Kate Winslet might be a good fit.
She'd be good. Oh, I think she'd be really good. She'd have, like, some of that Rose from the Titanic initially, and then she'd slowly turn into, like, one of her more badass roles, you know? Yeah. Oh, I could see that.
Yeah, I really like her for that.
I have no idea how old, like, Kate Blanchett is, but Kate Blanchett could be good at that, too.
Ooh.
Maybe Kate Blanchett is more of a Grace, actually, thinking about it. Like, that stoic kind of demeanor.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I imagine Patricia, I don't know, it was probably said what color her hair was, but I imagine her as blonde.
I do too. I don't know why exactly.
Okay. Maybe it was said, I can't remember, but I definitely see her as like a Southern belle.
Yeah. How about for Mrs. Green?
Like I mean, the obvious ones that come to mind are like Octavia Spencer and Viola Davis.
I said Viola Davis too. I thought she'd do such a good job.
Viola Davis would be so good at that. I think Octavia Spencer would be good at that too, but Octavia Spencer is, well, maybe this would be good. I think Octavia Spencer has really good like comedic timing. And maybe in that way, like she would, I thought Miss Green, when she was telling off those women, was hilarious. And just telling them like it was. Not hilarious, not haha laughing. I was just like, yes, go. So one of the two of them maybe would be really good.
Yeah, I immediately thought of Viola Davis. She could just act in anything though, and I feel like I would think she was great. So
I know, I feel like that's like the easy answer because she's so incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other one that I thought of was Alfre Woodard. And she is from a few seasons of Desperate Housewives. And I don't know what it is about her. I just feel like she would do a really good job in that role. So.
I've never seen Desperate Housewives.
Yeah, of course you haven't. It's fine.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, and now, you know, the big reveal. Who would you want to play James Harris?
Oh. Like, who comes to mind, and he's too old, and I don't think he's conventionally attractive enough, is Woody Harrelson.
Really?
Yeah. Like, if Woody Harrelson was younger and more, because I think I think he would do a really good job acting the role, even though he doesn't look like the role, and he's got like that Southern drawl. So I think he would do a really good job at the role. I just don't think he's the right actor for it. But I could see someone with his demeanor doing a really good job with it. I don't know looks wise who I imagine. I imagine James Harris with dark hair. I don't know if that's right or wrong.
I do too.
And a full head of hair, which Woody Harrelson obviously doesn't have. I don't know. Who?
Okay, I've been picking older people too. Like, I pick people from, like, that I think of. But the problem is those people are now all older. We're watching Cheers for the first time, though, and Woody Harrelson just showed up. And he's such a fun character.
Oh, is he in Cheers?
He's in
No, he's not. Is he really?
Cheers, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
What
he starts in season 4.
I had no idea.
And it's like multiple seasons.
That's so funny.
Now that you say that, I think he's too old. Now that you say that, I could see Matthew McConaughey being good too in that role.
Oh, he'd be great at that role, actually. He'd be really, like, he is definitely, like, charismatic and attractive enough that you would believe it, how these women could have gotten sucked in and seduced. And he does also have, like, that Southern charm. I think he would do a really good job. It would be really hard to see him with, like, stuff coming out of his mouth and sucking on people because he's just so lovable. But in that way, too, it would probably really distress everyone.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Initially, I thought you'd be so proud of me. I thought maybe Timothée Chalamet might be a good pick because I was trying to pick younger people. And I know his name and know that he's younger.
So young.
But then...
Yeah, he's so young.
Yeah, I don't think he is old because James Harris is sort of established, like, sort of this charming, suave, established guy, right? Like a guy you would expect to be like in his probably early 40s, I'm guessing, and like You would expect that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because he fit in so well with all of the other men. And so then I thought, and I don't think you'll know this because you don't watch The Boys, but the guy that plays Homelander, his name is Anthony Starr. I thought he would do a fantastic job. He is in The Boys, and he is the freaking best actor because every single scene with him in there, I don't know if he's going to murder someone or hug them. Like, I just am never sure what's going to happen. And he plays evil, but charming so well. Like, he charms so many people and is this very, like, face of, like, this savior, you know, comic book hero, and then, like, murders people in his free time all the time. And I feel like he would just... you have to watch it, because I think when you watch an episode or two, you'd be like, oh, I get it. Yeah.
I could see it just from looking at him. Like, he looks like something like I would imagine James Harris to look like. Someone who came to mind, too, just now was, and this is probably because I just adore him, and he's in a lot of shows that I really love, but Pedro Pascal is the correct age. I think he has a good demeanor for it, and he is good looking and charismatic. That's just a thought. Do you not know who Pedro Pascal is? This is going to kill me.
I think I do.
My gosh, I can tell from the look on your face. You're killing me. He's the Mandalorian. He's in The Last of Us now. I also didn't
watch that. Either of those.
Well, it's just coming out. But he's... Yeah, and you don't really see his face much in The Mandalorian, I guess, to be fair. This is the way. Yeah, he's a good actor. He's... I don't know how well he would do creepy. Like, I don't know. I think we have better options than him. He's just someone who came to mind because he's the correct age, and I think he has kind of the look that we're thinking.
It makes you think, like, casting agents must have a hard job because, like, it's hard sometimes to find someone that, like, sometimes it's like they're just the right age and they're a good actor.
Yeah.
And when something is really well cast, I feel like you can just tell. And so, if Amazon TV needs us to cast this show, please reach out.
Yeah.
We're pretty busy.
Yeah, we're on it.
We could probably make time for that.
I can squeeze you in, maybe.
So what would you rate this on our Monstration Club rating?
I think it's one of the least traditional horror pieces of media I've ever encountered. I was really surprised by it at almost every turn, except for, like, you knew he was a vampire before Patricia, which I also, as I said, I loved because it was that horror element of, oh my god, the audience knows what's happening, and she's just being so stupid, wake up. But I'm gonna give it an A+. I loved it. I really did. There wasn't a whole lot of criticism I can provide for it.
Okay, I was gonna say at least an A. I'm okay with A+. I say let's do it.
I really loved it. Am I being too generous? Honestly, I think that's the pinnacle for me.
Go with your gut.
Like, I don't think anything is going to be as good as this ever. And I had such high hopes for the next book I read, The Final Girl Support Club, and then when it wasn't that, it probably wasn't even as bad as I thought it was. I was just on such a high.
It was really
good. And then it just came crashing down. Yeah, it was so good. It's definitely the best book I read all of last year.
Oh, yeah. I read Carrie after this, and it's a great book. But I was like, oh, but I just miss Patricia and her friends.
I know. It was so good. Will we ever get that high again? I don't know. Probably, because Harry Potter ended and we survived.
It was hard, though. It was really hard.
That was not easy. That took me years.
I'm still living with the disappointment.
Yeah. I'm going to give it an A+.
Yeah, me too.
I just really loved the book. If you didn't read it, you should read it. I don't feel like we gave too much away. I still think everyone in the whole world should read it forever and ever. It needs to go down in history as one of those, like really compelling, life-changing books. It did change my life a little bit. It got me really excited to start reading again, and then it all came crashing down around me.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
It's fine. It's cool. Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun. And until next time, don't let vampires into your home. Don't invite them in.